The film begins with an intriguing scene where a man, clearly disoriented, wanders through a dense forest wearing only his underwear. Simultaneously, a desperate phone call reaches the emergency police service. A distressed woman reports her husband missing, lost in that same forest. Almost at the same time, another call is answered. This time, it's the anguished voice of someone trapped in their own room, pleading for help, unable to get out. A third call brings an even more unsettling report: the presence of several people standing motionless, like living statues, blocking a door. The narrative shifts to an academic setting in a classroom. There we find Mr. Johnson, a teacher, preparing to administer a dreaded exam. Among the students are Lizzie, Ash, Rory, and Jake, a diverse group of students anxious about the test. To ensure the integrity of the exam, Johnson collects and locks all the cell phones in a cabinet. The atmosphere of concentration is disrupted when Jake tries to pass a note to Lizzie, but, by a twist of fate, the paper ends up in Ash's hands, revealing an invitation for a post-exam date. The teacher, noticing the distraction, reprimands the students and demands full focus. The silence in the room is broken by the incessant ringing of the locked cell phones, which start to go off continuously, heightening the tension in the room. Mr. Johnson himself is interrupted by an urgent call that visibly shakes him. After delegating supervision of the room to Rory, he leaves in a hurry and does not return. The teacher's prolonged absence and the relentless ringing of the phones raise the students' anxiety. Jake, unable to bear the uncertainty, tries to force open the cabinet, while Rory insists that he stay calm. At that moment, an alarming announcement echoes over the school loudspeakers, instructing everyone to lock themselves in and not leave under any circumstances. The voice over the loudspeaker only intensifies the panic. The students turn on the radio in search of news, only to be bombarded with terrifying reports. Something mysterious has landed on Earth, and the armed forces are mobilized, trying to understand the situation. Suddenly, the sound of gunshots echoes outside, followed by the impact of a dead bird against the classroom window. Gripped by fear, they finally break into the cabinet to retrieve their phones, finding a flood of calls and messages from their worried families. As they try to process the information, Ash begins to experience bizarre hallucinations and, driven by morbid curiosity, leaves the room, closely followed by her friends. They encounter an eerily empty hallway, with no sign of teachers or other students. At the end of the hallway, a strange and menacing door takes up the entire space, pulling in objects thrown at it. Although Ash feels tempted to explore the unknown, her suggestions visibly terrify the others, and they retreat, hesitant in the face of the unknown. Even in the face of danger, Ash remains captivated by the mysterious door, almost swallowed by her curiosity. At the last moment, Lizzie arrives and pulls her away from the threshold. Confused and shaken, Ash impulsively reacts by kissing Lizzie, a gesture Jake witnesses, furious. He cannot hide his anger at seeing his girlfriend involved with someone else, sparking a heated argument between them. In the heat of the moment, Ash accidentally pushes Jake toward the door. Rory, trying to calm the situation, is also pulled along with him. Overcome by guilt, Ash decides to face the unknown and steps through the door, leaving Lizzie alone in the hallway in a haunting silence. The camera then pulls back to reveal the now silent, deserted city. A live journalist explains that, although many have disappeared, there are reports of people miraculously returning. He mentions Project Knockers, a scientific initiative that sends volunteers through the door to collect data and understand the phenomenon. The volunteers, including a couple named Vince and Becky and their friend Patrick, are instructed to remain on the other side for a maximum of 12 minutes to avoid the door having any irreversible control over them. The trio, equipped with suits resembling those for a space mission, cautiously approach the house that hosts the door. Inside, they encounter a bizarre setup, a large room with 3 doors arranged in a spherical formation. Becky suggests they split up to cover more ground and gather vital information about the mysterious environment. Later scenes show Patrick exploring the area. The silence is broken by the sound of distant crying, which he decides to investigate. He discovers a woman named Rose, surrounded by a sea of flowers. Surprised, he reports the encounter to his superiors and questions who she is. Rose, with a reproachful look, states her name and criticizes him for forgetting her so quickly, even though Patrick has never seen her before. Meanwhile, Becky ventures through an immaculate white kitchen where the utensils are arranged in an unusual manner. She notices an empty cradle rocking by itself, and after stopping it, she sees a shadow projected onto the door. In parallel, Vince reports that the third door leads to an elegantly decorated bedroom. He encounters a wall clock marking precisely 3 o'clock beside an expressive statue. Intrigued, he moves to another area and finds another clock pointing to 6 o'clock and the same statue, now with an altered expression. Curiosity drives him to a third room where a clock reads 9 o'clock and the statue has square-shaped eyes, intensifying the strangeness of the place. Meanwhile, Rose suddenly suffers a seizure and begs for help. Patrick rushes to her aid, but she then begins to laugh, revealing that it was all an act. However, her plea for Patrick not to leave her again confuses him, and he reluctantly agrees to stay. With time running out, a bizarre twist occurs. Patrick's helmet fills with flowers as Rose watches in amusement. The petals suffocate Patrick, who desperately struggles for air until he succumbs. Meanwhile, Becky is overwhelmed by an intense hallucination. She envisions herself with Vince, happy and pregnant, a thrilling yet painful scene given the loss of her child in reality. The illusionary Vince tries to convince her that this is her true reality. However, resilient, Becky rejects the illusion and shoots at him with a laser gun. Vince, for his part, faces an even more surreal dilemma. While trying to find an exit, he encounters a room containing 2 other versions of himself. A debate over the true identity of Vince ensues, culminating with the fake version swapping the clothing of his spacesuit, leaving him indistinguishable. Upon finding the room with multiple Vinces, Becky feels confused and desperate. Each Vince tries to prove his authenticity. Frustrated and pressed for time, she shoots one who seems out of context, wearing winter clothes in the middle of summer. Still, doubts linger, and after an intense interrogation over intimate details of their lives, she identifies the real Vince, but is suddenly controlled by an unknown force and shoots him. Overwhelmed by guilt, she succumbs to a tragic end. Next, we meet Jamal Adkins, a scientist following the morning news. He discovers that half of the world's population has vanished due to the mysterious door, and that Project Knockers, designed to explore and understand the phenomenon, resulted in catastrophic failure, with most volunteers not returning. The public is urgently instructed to report any sightings of the door to the police. After turning off the radio, Jamal heads to a nearby forest, driven by an unrelenting search for answers. He finds one of the enigmatic doors and, with determination, sets up his communication equipment. After several attempts, the door unexpectedly responds. The door not only knows intimate details about Jamal, such as his name and social security number, but also communicates cordially, calling him friend. Driven by curiosity, Jamal questions the door about its origins and purpose. It reveals that it belongs to an advanced civilization with the mission to observe and catalog humanity. Sometime later, Jamal invites his fellow scientist, Kathy, to visit his home, and she arrives accompanied by her young boyfriend, Leo. Despite Jamal's initial reservations about Leo, he decides to trust Kathy's judgment. He shares the discovery of the door in the forest, prompting surprise from both. Leo suggests reporting the door, but Jamal explains that his interaction with it was positive and that it appeared friendly and cooperative. Together, they go to the forest, where Jamal shows them the door and demonstrates how he communicates with it. He introduces Kathy and Leo to the door, which greets them warmly. Kathy is amazed, recognizing the revolutionary potential of this discovery. However, Leo, skeptical, steps away to make a call and report what he saw. Meanwhile, Kathy continues the interaction with the door, which identifies itself as Lamage, Jamal spelled backward. When asked about his purpose there, Lamage repeats his mission to study humans and archive their existence. Fascinated, Kathy becomes excited about the possibility of unraveling the secrets of the universe and tells Jamal that this could be their chance to become the cosmic explorers they've always dreamed of being. However, the moment of discovery is interrupted by the arrival of a police officer, Ricky, a friend of Leo's. With his gun drawn, he orders Kathy to step away from the door, citing potential danger. He then arrests Jamal for breaking the law by interacting with the door without reporting it. Curious, Ricky asks the name of the detainee, and the door responds for him, identifying itself as Jamal. Surprised to encounter a talking door, Ricky becomes disoriented. In this moment of confusion, Kathy reacts by striking him with a branch. The commotion leads to an accidental gunshot, hitting Leo and resulting in his death. After the tragic turn of events, horrified, Officer Ricky raises his weapon against Jamal. In desperation, Jamal calls out to Lamage for help. Strangely, the door exerts a kind of hypnosis over Ricky, making him turn the gun on himself and fire fatally. Jamal and Kathy, though devastated by the bloodshed, feel a fleeting relief to be safe. Lamage then greets them as friends and announces that it is time for renewal. At that moment, they watch in astonishment as celestial objects begin to fall from the sky, heralding an imminent transformation. The scene shifts, introducing Midnight Martin, a streamer, in a video call with Dr. Alan Price, a specialist in parallel worlds. From the start, Alan exhibits peculiar behavior, as if under some external influence. Martin, unsettled, questions him about the doors, their intentions, and the future of humanity. Alan explains that the arrival of the doors marks a turning point, signaling a cosmic evolution for humans and the beginning of a new adaptive era. Despite the revelations, Martin remains skeptical, wondering if humanity should prepare to fight the doors to survive. However, Alan clarifies that the doors are uncontrollable entities that define and dominate the course of events. Faced with this reality, Martin seeks advice on what to do, but Alan merely reiterates that the only option is to wait for renewal, a concept Martin mocks, likening it to a web browser update. During the conversation, network interruptions and flickering lights add a layer of tension. When the connection stabilizes, Martin questions whether people altered by the doors truly return the same. Alan, aware of the streamer's fears, surprises him by calling him by his real name, Paul, revealing knowledge that should be secret. Faced with Martin's perplexity, Alan encourages him to accept the door, promising that all his insecurities will be erased. Then, an unknown power takes hold of Martin, who begins to scream in agony. Watching calmly, Alan urges him to embrace his fate. After a sequence of screams and erratic behavior, Martin suddenly calms down, removes his clothes, and heads upstairs in a serene manner. The broadcast is cut off, and Alan greets him warmly with a sinister "welcome" as the camera fades to black, leaving Martin's fate to our imagination. If you enjoyed this film, I recommend watching this other one here as well. I guarantee you'll like it. See you there.